Okay, welcome everybody to the Weiner Wellness Virtual Summit. And with me today is Cindy Chronister. She is a doctor of naturopathic medicine. She's going to be talking today about thermography. And I have to say, Cindy, I'm excited to hear about this. I know a little bit about thermography, and I've had it brought into my facility by a contractor who did it. She traveled around and had a traveling machine, and it really helped enhance my practice and people's health through it. So I'm excited to learn from you, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and how you got into this, and then we are ready to learn.
Awesome. Well, I am excited to be here. Thermography is one of my favorite things in the world to talk about. And it's really funny because many years ago, a friend said to me, "You should have a thermogram." I said, "A thermo what?" I had never heard of it. And now I've been doing thermography for others since 2009 in Troy, Virginia, the big city of Troy, which is actually just on the outside of Charlottesville. And so we're sort of between Charlottesville and Richmond. And just love doing that and providing this life-saving tool to women and men. We do also have men that do it, and it's for the breast and full body. So I have a practice here and just love what I do.
Okay, well, we're excited to learn, and I believe you have a little PowerPoint you're going to share with us.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So I believe you're in an upcoming movie, did I hear? A little.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
You did hear about that, did you?
And what is that called?
Yes, this is, it's actually called Boobs, The War on Women's Breast. And it is just coming
love
out.
it.
Yes, it's a documentary that was made. It was a 30-minute documentary, and it won so many awards at different film festivals that the filmmaker, Megan Smith, she ended up having to, it was picked up by a distributor. They said, "We've got to have more of this. It just needs to be longer, more content, more information." And so she made it into a 90-minute documentary. And
Where can we find it?
I can actually go back to this recording and comment on
Post it. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the comments.
Thank you.
Link to it. I have a link to a trailer, and then it can be purchased. And I'm trying to get a showing in Virginia, but I don't know that that's going to help a lot of people on this webinar. But definitely just want to be aware of it, and it's a great tool. And are you, Tracy, are you seeing my?
If you go up to the top and hit slideshow and start from beginning, that'll take up the screen then, and you'll be good to go. I do see your PowerPoint. You just need to go on. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. And I just want to make this a little bit smaller here. All this wonderful technology. If I can get my mouse to cooperate. Sorry about that. It's just not wanting to. There we go. Okay. And is my video still showing?
Yep, you're good to go.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I am excited. I was telling Tracy before we popped on, thermography is definitely one of the things that I love talking about the most. And you'll see on the screen here, it's actually digital infrared thermal imaging. That is just another name that we have for thermography. And applications of thermography are in industrial. And I know a lot of people use it looking for water leaks and things in buildings. There's also military applications of thermography. And then, of course, today what we're talking about is really more the medical use of thermography. And so thermography was registered with the FDA in 1982. This is definitely not a new technology for intervention or looking at the body with thermography. We have over 30 years of research. The breast thermography research actually began in the late 1950s. And the over 800 peer-reviewed study, that's probably a little bit outdated. That's been that way in the 11 years that I've been doing thermography. So there are probably even more studies that have been done on thermography since then. And in the database of the peer-reviewed studies, hundreds of thousands of women have been included as study participants. And some of the studies even followed patients up to 12 years, looking at their history and how thermography was working for them. So what is thermography? Well, simply put, thermography, medical imaging, is provided to be able to have the earliest possible warning sign that something may be heading in the wrong direction. Thermography can be the single most important marker of high risk for women. And it literally can be the key to survival and early detection. Thermography can pick up abnormal activity even before the mass is formed. And so that is what we call true early detection of being able to know what's happening with the breast. So it's an important role in cancer prevention, because if you can find out, if you know ahead of time before mass is even formed that you are at a higher risk, and not just from family history or anything like that, but based on your physiology of your breast, if you know you're at higher risk, then you're more apt to work with your doctor, make some lifestyle changes, and do some things that would actually help prevent having that to move forward into full-blown cancer. And thermography uses a specialized camera that is sensitive to the detection of electromagnetic energy, basically light, and the infrared wavelengths, which is heat. And so these images serve as a remote sensing system, and nothing touches the body, or there's no compression or radiation with thermography. And you just get an electrical signal that's produced that generates a visible image to display. And we're going to see some of those too. I have some pictures of images to give you an idea in case you've never seen that. So what thermography is not. Thermography does not diagnose. It is not structural imaging. It is physiological imaging of the breast or of the body. It does not see internal organs. Unfortunately, there are some websites that I've seen that indicate that you can see organs, or you can see specific parts of the body that are more than 5 millimeters into beyond the skin. Thermography only penetrates about 5 millimeters, and so it's not going to see organs. It's not going to be able to see. One of the ones that I hear the most is that it can see the carotid artery. That's not possible with the technology. However, what we can see and what the standards go by, the carotid arteries actually supply blood flow to the orbital area. And so if we're doing a full body thermogram, or even just doing an upper body, and we see that there is hypothermia, meaning not enough blood flow around that area, then it is a reasonable suspicion to say appropriate imaging to see the carotid artery should be done, so that you can find out if you have any type of blockage. So it's not so much that we see the actual organ or part of the body specifically with the full body thermography. However, there are markers or indicators that we can see on the body, especially from the spine, that the body gives us to the surface of the skin, that we can see things that do need further investigation. The other thing that thermography does not do, it does not show metastasis, the spread of cancer. I've had people call me and ask if they could schedule thermography to make sure that things are not spreading. And unfortunately, thermography is not the right test for that, or the right imaging. There are other forms of imaging that would be more appropriate for that. So what is the difference between thermography and mammography, or just structural imaging, which could also include ultrasound and MRI? So thermography looks at the physiological health of the breast. There can be a mass present in the breast tissue, but thermography will not actually see that mass, but we will see the activity that that mass actually creates, that those abnormal cells are creating. Typically, abnormal cells or cancer cells require additional blood flow. So it is changing the vascularity and the hyperthermia within the breast. And we can see that even before that mass is formed. What mammography, ultrasound, and MRI, the structural imaging or anatomical imaging, what they're looking for is the mass itself. And so we're actually being able to see that things are moving in the wrong direction by using thermography, and ultrasound and MRI will help them determine exactly where a mass is located. So thermography is very effective, and the frequency can be much more often than your mammograms, for example, because there's no radiation, there's no compression, there's no damage to the breast whatsoever. And it's also safe for any breast size or shape. I know that I've had many women tell me that because they have very dense breasts, that mammograms are very, very difficult for them, and they're often called back multiple times because it's very difficult to see the difference between a mass and dense breast tissue. Even our government even the task force from the government on preventive services, they actually don't even recommend mammography for women who have been told that they have dense breasts. Thermography is also great for women who have had augmentation implants or reductions or even fibrocystic cysts. Those are things that make the breast tissue very sensitive, and so this is very effective for them. And it is safe for frequent monitoring. If someone is undergoing any type of treatment or therapy, or just needs closer monitoring, then this is something that is really, really helpful, because again, there's no negative side effects to the body whatsoever, and we can keep a closer eye on any physiological changes that are happening in the breast. So there are a lot of little myths, unfortunately, out there, but there is one really big myth that I really need to bring to the forefront, and that is, do I still need structural imaging? There are so many people that I've heard say, I'm not ever going to have structural imaging again. I'm only going to do thermography. And although the thermograms do provide the earliest possible warning sign, there are specific cancers, in layman's terms, they're called cold cancers, that don't create that patterning that we're looking for, that additional blood flow, the increased vascularity, the hyperthermia. It doesn't create that. And so the answer is yes, you absolutely still do need structural or anatomical imaging. However, ultrasound actually has a slightly higher sensitivity level than mammograms do. And ultrasound, of course, does not use radiation either. And it's one of the things that we actually, we have a company that does mobile ultrasound, and they come into our office once a month. And that gives us an opportunity to have women, have others have the opportunity to have that anatomical imaging as a follow-up for, making sure that they have good breast health. So an abnormal thermogram is 10 times more significant as a future risk indicator for breast cancer than even a family history. And so when you add thermography to your normal breast screenings, you actually increase detection and survival rates to 98%. This is a no-brainer for me. I was mentioning earlier that many years ago, I had no idea what thermography was. And someone said to me, why don't you go get a thermogram? I didn't have a clue what she was talking about. And when I walked out of that office and having that thermogram, I was struck literally, I believe, by the voice of God that said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to provide this for women. And, you know, when you spend $195, which is what we charge for a thermogram, and it's done annually, you know, it really truly is a no-brainer to add to your normal breast screenings, your doctor palpation, your self-examination, and your structural imaging in whatever way that you and your doctor decide works best for you and what will protect your health. And that's really the important thing here and what I want to drive home. The whole point of this is not really to drive thermography, it's to drive prevention, it's to drive early detection, it's to make sure that women are protected and that we are saving lives. So there are definitely standards and guidelines. Without standards and guidelines, the images would be useless. The guidelines have been in place for thermography since the early 1980s. And there are both pre-imaging protocols that the patients have to go through before coming in, as well as strict climate control protocols that we adhere to make sure that the images are as accurate as possible. And the pre-imaging protocols, those are things like no lotions, no powders, no deodorants, no exercise for 4 hours before, don't shower an hour before, don't shave your arms, your underarms, you know, just different things that are going to create possible artifacts on the body when we're doing it. When someone is acclimating to the temperature of the room, basically for a breast thermogram, you will be undressed completely from the waist up, and you sit in a way that the underarms are more open, and you're going to acclimate 15 minutes total. And the climate control of that room is extremely important. The room really should be carpeted, if at all possible. And there should be no direct sunlight, any window in the room should be covered, and so that there's no outside light coming in. You cannot use regular light bulbs or incandescent bulbs. Only using LED or fluorescent bulbs is okay because they don't create additional heat, which can be an issue in the room for the climate control. The temperature in the room needs to be within a certain range and should not change even 1 degree during the actual imaging that you're doing for that patient. And you know, these are just really important protocols, instructing the patient not to touch anywhere. It's always really fun because we do 7 images total when we take our images. We do a bilateral view, and then we do what's called the oblique, which is what you're seeing on the screen. And then we do for each side, and then we do in the individual breast. And then at the end, we actually do what's called the lift. We just have them bring the opposite hand over and press, you know, at the upper part of the breast tissue and just press in and pull up, and we get a better picture underneath. And when they remove their hand, they can see the markers, they can see where their fingerprints were. And it's just something I've been doing it for 11 years, and it's still kind of fun to see it each time. And making sure, you know, that people understand that they really cannot, during their acclimation period, they cannot touch in the area in which that we're going to be imaging. So, and the camera specifications, that is really important too. And I'll give you more information in just a bit about the camera that we use. But it does have a huge impact on the quality of the images and, you know, the way in which that it's seeing the breast tissue. So we have what are called thermobiological scores, or TH scores. And the thermobiological scores go from a 1 to a 5. And all breast thermography reports should contain a TH grading of each breast. And sometimes there's a little difference between the breasts. That's one of the things that we're actually looking for. When the grading is done, the board certified thermologist is looking at 22 different points on each breast and actually measuring the temperature difference. And this grading system was devised to provide a method for universal interpretation of both the qualitative and the quantitative thermal data. And that helps them, or helps us, to be able to relay to the patient what is your level of risk or concern, and allows us to see, if things are moving in one direction or the other, by being able to, change that score. There would be no way of actually objectively monitoring that progression or that change without it. So the grading system has also been in place since the early 1980s. And it's similar to the BI-RAD system for the mammograms. I know that years and years ago, when mammography first came out, it was not regulated, and you could go to one place and get a mammogram, and it would give you one set of results, and go somewhere else and you would get a different kind of set of results. And the FDA stepped in, and not that I'm a huge proponent of FDA stepping into things, but it needed to have consistency. And so the FDA stepped in, and they actually, said if a woman goes to, this place in this city or this place in this city, she should be getting similar results, since it is the same breast. And it's the same thing with thermography. We want there to be consistency with the imaging and making sure that women have accurate results. And so we use, as mammography uses the BI-RAD system, we use the thermobiological system, the TH system. And we're going to look at a few of these specifically. So a TH1 is a normal non-vascular image. In 11 years, I have only seen 3 of these. Unfortunately, it is just not very common to see normal images anymore. And a TH2 is a normal image, but a normal vascular image. And again, I've seen more of these, but the ones that are the most common, and I don't know the specific percentage, but I would say that at least 75% of all of my clients are in this TH3 range. This is what is considered questionable. 95% of the time, it is normal physiology, but there is that chance that something is moving in the wrong direction. And so the TH3, there really has been what is considered an epidemic of TH3s. And in order to be able to help women understand, because it's right in between, that questionable is right in between normal and abnormal, and we needed a little more information to be able to help them know kind of where things are, and if they're changing within that TH3 thermobiological score. And so we've added, within the category of TH3, we've added 2 more scores. So it's essentially a TH3 minus, which means it's a little bit closer to normal. And then you have the TH3 and then the TH3 plus, which is a little bit heading more in the direction of abnormal. So it's really important to know where you are in that TH3 category and monitor that year over year. The monitoring actually is really important annually for women 35 and older. And it allows us to have that earliest warning sign that something is shifting, something is changing. And for women 20 and up, unfortunately, most of our young women who are diagnosed with cancer are in the latter stages because they're not getting any type of imaging or, breast exams typically. And so their survival rates are pretty dismal. And this is one of the things that I really want to push home is I want women 20 to 35 to get thermography. And in that age group, it's just once every 3 years. And when I used to go to Starbucks, I don't anymore, but I always said, I spend more in a year at Starbucks than it would cost to get a thermogram. So it really is a very cost-effective, very affordable option to know where things stand and to know what you might need to do, and just being able to make some changes and being able to monitor it could actually save someone's life. So a persistent abnormal thermogram is actually considered the highest risk marker for future development of cancers. It carries a 22-time higher risk of future breast cancer. And it's the single most important marker of high risk for cancer, even, like I said before, even than family history. I've had a couple of experiences where I've had a client who had a Th4, and they went and they had a mammogram and everything, or an ultrasound, and everything was normal in the structural imaging. And thank God it was. But there were a couple of instances where they felt that this was scary for them because they're getting this abnormal, but their mammograms are fine. And what I want to highlight here is that if you have an abnormal thermogram, do not ignore that. And if your mammogram or your ultrasound or even your MRI is normal, that's wonderful. A Th4 does not mean you have cancer or have a mass. A Th4 means you're at much higher risk. And so you still want to monitor that much, much more closely than you would just a Th3 or one of the lower scores, because you want to make sure that nothing is actively changing physiologically in the breast. So definitely follow up with the structural imaging if you get a Th4, but if it's normal, don't ignore that. Definitely continue to stay vigilant with it. And the severely abnormal image, that's probably one of the most visually stunning ones that you can see. You can, the left breast there, the one that's on the right, this is actually the left breast. And that is the inflamed breast, and the one on the right breast, the one that's pictured on the left, the one that's more purple and blue, that obviously is a normal breast or a cool breast. And I am very, very grateful that I've not seen very many of these, but it's always disheartening when I do, but at least they know and they can, figure out what needs to happen next. So how is it performed? This is actually a picture of the system that we use. And we use a Spectron IR camera, which is a camera that was designed specifically for medical use. And I have been extraordinarily pleased with the performance of the camera and the system. It is, the stand is an electric stand, which makes it really super easy to do full body thermography. And it is a hospital grade stand. And so when you come in, again, before your visit, you'll have a list of things that you don't want to do. I mentioned those earlier. And you want to make sure that I basically tell everyone, just come in au naturel, and don't worry about, your deodorant and your lotions and powders and all of that. We want to make sure that there is nothing on the skin that could cause any type of marker that a false marker that we don't want to have on there. And again, the climate controlled environment is extremely important because we are measuring, the heat coming from the body. If the room is too warm or if the room is too cold, it is possible to have the room too cold. We don't want you sitting there with, shivering. That's not a good thing either. And you do have to acclimate to that temperature. There's information out about thermography that there needs to be a cold water challenge. And that really is some old research, and it is not something, and essentially all that means is that for those of you who have never heard of this, it's not about having cold water put on you, but rather taking your hands and putting them in cold water for an amount of time and then taking the images again. But it has been proven that that really is not necessary. It does not help with the imaging at all. So image interpretation. getting really good, accurate imaging in thermography is critical to saving lives. And it's, it's what's on my side of the desk. It's what I have to make sure that I do, and I do very, very well in order to protect women. And who I use or who anyone uses to do their image interpretation is just as important. You can have really great images, but if you have someone that really doesn't have the experience in interpreting those images, then you could potentially have something that's going on and miss the earliest possible warning, that you could get. So the education for a thermologist, any doctor can actually become a thermologist, but what's important is the education to do that, that really makes a difference. I partner with a doctor in California, Dr. William Amalu, and he was trained under Dr. Hobbins. Dr. Hobbins was a medical doctor that spent the majority of his life dedicated to thermography, or his career, I should say, dedicated to thermography. He was just very well respected and much loved in the industry. And Dr. Amalu spent 3 years in an internship to learn how to effectively interpret the images that are being taken. And so ask the questions where you're going, who's doing the interpretation. We have 2 other doctors that Dr. Amalu has taught, and they have interned with him, both a couple of years each. And unfortunately, I am aware of some training programs that they will teach a doctor how to become a thermologist in a weekend course. And you really want to make sure that your images are being read by someone who has the experience to know what they're doing. So it's really super important to know that, and knowing the right questions to ask anytime that you're going into an office to have any type of imaging or procedure or anything done. We want to know all there is to know, and just knowing what questions to ask is half the battle. So the strict standardized interpretation protocols have actually been established for over 35 years. And it's just a matter of having people that know, what they are and how to really see. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I can draw, but I'm not an artist, and it's kind of that same difference as someone that is really, really an expert in their field. So who benefits from thermography? Well, again, women over the age of 20 looking to assess their current risk. Again, it's just once every 3 years from ages 20 to 35. Women with fibrocystic breasts, those images in mammography are very difficult to interpret. So the thermogram makes a great choice to add for that. And then large breasted women or women with augmentation, thermography, the augmentation does not interfere with thermography at all. And women with a lump or other breast condition, just looking to gain more information. Again, this is just the monitoring part. You want to keep an eye on something, but you don't want to continue to either compress or radiate the breast repeatedly. And so this is a way in which that you can see if there are physiological changes happening in the breast. Breast cancer survivors, again, monitoring more closely. Just having more imaging done on a regular basis, just to make sure that things are, staying where they should. And basically just anyone who chooses to have as much information as possible. Like I said before, we offer breast as well as full body thermography here in our office. And I often throw my husband under the bus and he knows and he doesn't mind. We have been together for 10 years. And so not long after we were together, I said, we really need to get a baseline full body thermogram on you. And not expecting anything. I mean, he's a very healthy guy, and I was working on some other things, some digestive things with him. And, you know, he was, his two daughters were vegetarian, and so they ate vegetarian quite a bit. And I found out was really pastatarian, but we know how that goes. And so anyway, we did the full body thermogram, and he had a couple of things, some vascularity issues in the lower extremities in his legs. Well, he's 6'4" and played volleyball for years, so that was not a big surprise. But to cut to the chase, he had severe reflexes from his thyroid, and no symptoms whatsoever that he was that I had seen from his thyroid. And so he went to the doctor and had it palpated, and they found 2 complex nodules on his thyroid. And so had we not done the full body thermogram, we may not have known to intervene and support his thyroid and nourish the body when we could. And, you know, I don't know what would have happened, but now, years later, everything is fine. He's had an ultrasound on it even recently, and it looks great. So we're very grateful for that. So I'm just looking at my notes, make sure I don't forget anything here, because I want to make sure that we get, the other thing too is that in the report that comes back for the thermogram, in our reports, we also will notate any hormonal patterning or patterning that looks like it could be from, you know, hormones in the report. And it doesn't go into the grading of the thermobiological score for, you know, for the person. However, it's really important to know if you have hormonal activity happening in the breast, especially with levels of estrogen increasing. You know, that's a precursor. It's an indicator that, you know, you're at higher risk for breast cancer. So just even knowing that that you have that patterning in the breast is really good information to have. And then again, you can work with your doctor and finding out what types of things you might be able to do to reduce that. So literally, we're all at risk. 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer. 75% occurs in women with no family history. But really what I want to talk about here is we are living in such a toxic environment, and it goes back to that epidemic of TH3s. Why in the world is there an epidemic of TH3s in the last 15 to 20 years? And I know probably with you guys being on this webinar and being part of this health summit, you're very well aware of all of the toxicity that we are exposed to on a daily basis. It's amazing to me when you are able to detox your diet, and then, you know, you go to a restaurant, a fast food restaurant or something, and then taste the food and how different it tastes. I mean, I can actually taste the chemicals in it. It's really disgusting. But it's all around us. The genetically modified foods, we're actually, you know, able to see some increased vascularity, some issue showing up in the thermograms from that. You know, there are many, many different things, you know, from what we put on our skin, what we put in our mouth, what we're breathing in the air. You know, there's so many things that are toxic to us in all parts of our body. And, you know, the other specialty that I have is lymphatic therapy. And it is just amazing to me how congested our lymphatic system is. And I bring that up because a congested lymphatic system can play a huge part in toxins sitting in the breast. Toxins sit in fat cells. And so the breast obviously is a great place for the toxins to accumulate. And if the lymphatic system is not flowing the way that it should, there is a large collection of lymph nodes in the underarm. And if those are congested and the breast really don't have a clear path to be able to, you know, have the lymph moving, that is a toxic cesspool, and that is a really bad situation. So making sure that your lymph is moving, making sure that, that you're not congesting the lymph around the breast. Wearing underwire bras is a really bad idea. I've had another doctor, a board certified cardiologist, tell me too that the underwire bras are really bad for the heart as well. So there are two good reasons for us to lose the underwire, ladies. And honestly, not that I've ever in my life been a proponent for going braless, but if you have an opportunity and you're comfortable, that's really the best thing we can do. We don't want to congest the breast. So, keeping that in mind and making sure that you're allowing the breast to move freely and to allow that lymph to move. So some of the benefits, again, allows us to provide the earliest possible detection. It really could mean the difference between, not having to have any type of therapy, or, it could mean the difference between a lumpectomy versus a mastectomy, whether or not you have to get any type of chemotherapy or radiation, or, you're able to do other therapies that nourish and support the body. And ultimately, it really could mean the difference between life and death. Again, going back to our younger women and knowing that, they are not getting any type of imaging, it's so important for them to do something so that they know, and honestly, that they are educated and know that they have something that they can do. That's really a big thing too, because the motto of our office is knowledge is power, know your risk. And if you know you're at risk, then you can make educated choices. I laugh when I talk to my nutritional clients, and I'm not real black and white with things. It's like, I know there's a gray area, but if we make choices based on knowledge, then we know we've made that choice. And if we're making choices out of ignorance, and I don't mean stupidity, I mean ignorance is just not knowing, then we're likely to make more choices that are going to be detrimental to our health. And we want to make choices that are going to be supporting to our body and not the opposite. So thermography actually, it has the ability to detect the earliest signs of angiogenesis. And that's just a fancy word that we use to describe when there are abnormal cells and when they are demanding that additional blood flow. That's what causes that heat patterning, because of the additional blood flow. So the blood vessels get bigger, so the vascularity increase in the blood vessel size. The angiogenesis is where additional vessels are actually created off of the vessels that are currently there. And when you have an aggressive form of cancer, then that is something that will happen. And this thermography is the way in which to see that at the earliest possible time frame. And only thermography could identify, women at higher risk, regardless of family history and other factors. So in other words, if you have an abnormal, TH4 thermography, a consistent one, and you have no family history or anything else, you would likely not be thinking that you would be at risk for breast cancer, but this is actually letting you know that you do have that risk factor. And again, of younger women, gosh, you may think I'm trying to really drive that home. I think that's the third time I've had it in here. And again, may see a signal of hormonal imbalance in the breast. Again, just a way in which that this gives you information that you may not have known otherwise, and being able to protect your health. So allowing you to have more careful monitoring, aiding in earlier detection. Ultimately, this really does save breasts and potentially even save lives. Annual imaging. When we do the imaging annually, what happens is that the baseline that you have when you come in the second time, the board certified thermologist will be looking at your baseline and your second set of images. When you come in for the third year, all three will be looked at. When you come in for the fourth year, he doesn't look at 4 years, but he looks at your current, your previous year, and your baseline. So ongoing, 3 sets of images will always be compared to each other to make sure that they are looking specifically at any slight change that may be happening with your breast. And I also mentioned that a consistent abnormal TH4. I also want to say that I have seen individuals with a TH4 be able to reduce that to a TH3, which is significant. And that was done a couple of times by different types of therapies and lifestyle changes that they did. It is very unusual, although I have seen it, it is very unusual and really not our goal to take someone from a TH3 to a TH2 or try to get them to a TH1 because the TH1s are just rare. And again, the 18 to 35 performed every 3 years. And this is another picture of our actual room. So when you walk in the door, the person is sitting actually behind the screen. And then when we're doing the images, this part of the left-hand panel of that screen is just pulled over and they stand in front of the camera. So what are some next steps? Well, women really need to be proactive with their health and stay informed. Again, I said our motto is knowledge is power, know your risk. And it really is your risk. You need to be your own advocate with your breast health and just know where things are physiologically with what's going on. And combine thermography with your regular breast health care. Again, we are not advocating that thermography is a substitute for anything. Your self-exam is important. Your doctor palpation is important. Your structural imaging is important. And then the adding thermography again to those increases detection and survival rates to 98%. Again, it's just a no-brainer. And, you know, thermography, although it has been around since 1982, approved by the FDA to use for medical use, there's so many people like myself, just, 15 years ago, I had never even heard of thermography. I didn't know anything about it. So it doesn't matter where you're watching this, you can find a thermographer hopefully close to you. And the website to go to for that is breastthermography.com. That is Dr. William Amalu's website, and he does interpretation for different clinics all over the US, actually even internationally. And knowing that he's working with them tells me that they are, following the guidelines. They're using the thermobiological scores. I mean, everything is, the way that it should be to make sure that we're getting accurate imaging and, good reports. And so breastthermography.com, and there's a find a center link there that you can go to and find someone in your area. I don't do this just to drive people to my business. And, I think that we need to have more, high quality thermography centers out in, for people. Look how many mammogram machines there are in your particular area. And I always say there are enough boobs to go around. So we don't have to worry about that. We just need to make sure that women are getting this life-saving information. So, and I just wanted to touch base on full body thermography. I gave my husband's story. There are other people that have had full body thermography that have found out some things that they were unaware of. And it's really, really helpful to do a baseline. Full body thermography is not something you do annually, typically, unless there's something that you're monitoring. but it can give you so much information about what, you know, there was another example. My husband had this pain in his, right at his underarm, and he was complaining and complaining about it. And he's not a complainer. So I thought, okay, it's like time out. Let's, you know, get a thermogram on it. And I sent it for interpretation, and basically it was a trigger point. And so the recommendation was for him to get a massage, you know, but that was wonderful. That was great news, you know? And so it sometimes it's not really anything that's super serious, but sometimes it actually can be, as it was the first time for him. And the full body thermography can give us lots of information from, you know, just about everywhere in the body. This is, if anyone wants any of the technical information, you know, I can't spew this off the top of my head. So I just have this in here in case someone is interested in knowing about the Spectron IR camera and what the actual specifications are. And that's what that is for. The trainings and certifications, again, this is just Dr. Amalu and all of the different trainings and the certifications that he holds, and why I put my trust in him. And I've been working with him for, you know, going on 12 years, and just love his dedication. He lost his sister to breast cancer and added thermography to his practice because they didn't catch it with other imaging that they had done. And so he truly, he is, he actually is trained as an engineer. He's also a chiropractor. He's a board certified thermologist, and he is a really smart guy and really good at what he does and passionate about it. So I am grateful for my education through him, and you can learn more about him at that breastthermography.com site as well. And these are just some things that to give you an idea of what full body thermography might actually be able to identify. And so as you can see, it's a pretty lengthy list, and this is not all inclusive of things that you might be able to learn more about and figure out how you may be able to address these issues. So my website, and Tracy, I don't know how much time. Oh, I'm 12:54. I think I'm probably done. My website is corehealth.com, and my contact information is right there in the upper right-hand corner. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. And again, Dr. Amalu's site is thebreastthermography.com. And I will leave that up, Tracy. And I think we're probably, there you are.
Hi, I was here the whole time. I just sit in the background and listen and learn.
Yeah.
But I loved your line. There's enough boobs to go around. There sure are, you know?
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
I appreciated your approach of integrative and, you know, natural and giving your professional opinion on that. You know, I tend to sway away from mammograms, and, you know, some people go 100% in, and you seem to be that good buffer in the middle of, you know, they all have a place and a space in health.
Well, I think it's important to know, Dr. Amalu in his reports always said, if you haven't had a mammogram, you know, to work with your doctor and go by their recommendation, but that you should have a mammogram. Well, he has changed the wording.
Mm-hmm.
There is enough evidence out there at this point, and he no longer uses the word mammogram. He actually uses the word structural imaging. Mm-hmm. Because there are other options for structural imaging. It doesn't have to be the mammogram. And so ultrasound, and that's really the point that I'm trying to make, is because thermography cannot stand alone, because there are cancers that it cannot see, it's really important to know that you need that multimodal approach, and to get, you know, at least get an ultrasound, and, you know, from a qualified place to get it. I use Ultrasound America in Virginia, and she also goes to DC and Maryland. Mm-hmm. So, and she's phenomenal. So
good. Yeah, that's what I did. I didn't do thermography myself, but I brought people in that did it. And, it really did help a lot of women, because they may not have been able to get to Pittsburgh or wherever she was from, but they could go to my studio. They could come into my facility and get a thermography scan. And I was telling a story earlier. I'm going to see how much time we have, because I know Sheila Day's come up, but I was telling a story earlier of a girl I was working with, and she had infertility. I could not figure it out. Everything I did just didn't work. And finally, Junie Donatelli from Three Rivers came into my facility and was doing thermography scans. And I just said to her, I said, why don't you jump back in the room with Judy and see, she has a space. So she did scan her, and it ended up that she had an estrogen pattern. And that was primarily the issue. Her estrogen was imbalanced, probably some low progesterone. And after we did a little protocol to help balance out hormones, within 3 months, that scan cleared up and she looked great and she got pregnant. So, and I have the before and after picture. I'll have to send it to you. It's pretty impactful. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But it picked it up, so sometimes it takes a village. We really have to rely on each other and build a network of things that, if you're good at something, great. If you're not, find somebody who is, there's
Absolutely.
enough.
And you know what? The mobile units are great. And they just have to be so super careful of making sure that they're following those guidelines. And I've had a couple of women come to me that had it, that unfortunately the mobile unit wasn't following those guidelines.
Right.
And I've been asked to do mobile in multiple places, and when I say, well, I need the room carpeted, I need no air blowing on them, I need this kind of lighting, I need this, and this, and they're like, oh, well, we're not set up that way. And I'm like, well, I'm not willing to put women's lives at risk to do that.
Right.
So
yeah, same thing with her. It's like you had to have the room a certain temperature, had to be completely dark. So we followed all those guidelines. And when I was watching that page, I was like, I wonder how many people don't know that they go for thermography in a mobile unit and it's, not following those guidelines and it's skewing the test. So great information as always. And I was so glad to have you back. Thank you for being here.
It's so much fun. Thank you so much for allowing me to.
Yeah, anytime. You're always welcome. All right, guys, stay tuned.
Thanks.
Dr. Sheila Day is up next, and she's going to be talking about homeoprophylaxis, which is your alternative for immunization. So thanks again, Cindy.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.